Alrighty, welcome to the Friends Podcast. I'm Graham.
I'm Emery.
I'm Carson. And we have a
Alex.
special guest.
Special guest,
Alex.
Alex. And today we are going to be talking about the Superhuman Registration Act, and more specifically, what side we're on, pro or against, and why. This is just going to be a little fun, dinky episode. Nothing too serious like our previous episodes.
No, this is a serious topic.
Super serious topic.
We're
This
talking
is
about
this is a
superheroes,
real
bro.
piece of legislation act. So
This is real.
Well, is it more legislation than it is a treaty? Like,
well, we're not. A treaty is between two different countries,
Yeah.
and this isn't between countries. This was in the United States in the comic books. So, but I'm gonna let our special guest Alex Beebe start us off.
Didn't Canada get pulled into this with like Wolverine and?
No, they moved. If
no.
people who didn't want to be under the registration, they just went to Canada so they could.
Oh.
But I'm gonna let
missed
Alex Beebe start us off.
Captain-
Alex, give us your
Captain
thoughts.
Canada. Because if Captain America went to Canada, he'd be Captain Canada, not Captain America.
Captain Canada.
Not if he sticks for American values.
Okay.
okay, Alex, your thoughts.
I don't know. I'm against it because personally I'm more for privacy. Well, okay, so the thing with it is most of the superheroes, they didn't choose to be heroes. Like Peter Parker randomly got bit by a spider. That's not his choice. They were, you could say, armed.
It's just a messed up series of coincidences.
Yeah. So, like, for, like, gun control, you could take someone's gun away, but you can't take their powers away. I mean, I know in X-Men, they have, like, the neutralization
Process.
things. Yeah. But you can't just say, hey, everyone knows who you are because you own a gun. No one should know who you are because you have a power. Sure, you could consider it a threat, but it's not their fault. And most of them try to use it for good. Sure, there's the villains, but you shouldn't punish everybody that breaks the law because some of them do.
I agree with you, Alex, and I think we should probably take a step back and explain what the Registration Act is. So in the comic books, there was a series of incidents that happened where innocent bystanders were killed, and the government came up with this idea that all these superheroes had to come forward to the government, reveal their secret identity, and then act as officers of the government with salaries. And the government decided who they went to save and who they didn't go to save. So they determined who the villains were and who they weren't. And I agree with Alex. I am completely against the Registration Act. It's always super appealing to have this idea where we help save people's lives. And that's what the Registration Act tried to do. But if you look at it, there's still going to be collateral damage whether or not the government is in charge of the superheroes or not. So sure, we might save some lives, but there's still going to be collateral damage. People are going to still die. And they also wanted more responsibility from the superheroes. And while the superheroes weren't going out and publicly saying they were sorry about every single thing that happened, we look at we'll use Spider-Man for an example. With great power comes great responsibility. And sure, he doesn't come out and specifically take responsibility for the damage he caused to the billboard fighting Giant Man, but it's later shown from his own personal side that he takes this stuff very seriously, and he always does his best to try to help people out and save people in those situations. And he quite often beats himself up about the mistakes that he makes. So I think it's not the government's place to try to make them have them show their responsibility and guilt for their actions because they're already feeling it. And another issue that I have with the Registration Act is that it's basically freedom over security. And I think everyone kind of wants both. Everyone wants to have freedom, but in order to have security, you have to give up at least a part of your freedom. And my issue with giving up your freedom is, first off, we're all born equal and we're all born with these rights and freedoms. And like what Alex said, we're born with the right to privacy, and that Registration Act would violate that right. But I think when as us as humans, when we get too much power, we become corrupted. And having the government in charge of the superheroes and what their identities are and basically their lives, I think that gives the government too much power, and it would put the superheroes in positions where the government would take advantage of them or put them in places where they're at risk.
Okay. I believe that the government is kind of in the right here, because with them revealing themselves, it kind of, because, I understand that lives are going to be lost no matter what. However, like in a situation, people look towards who to blame. And they're going to, because the idea being, whose fault is it? And of course, and it's just the idea that it's making them show they take responsibility for their actions in public instead of in private, which they should be doing. If it's their fault that they caused civilian casualties, they should come out and say, it was my fault. If they're going to do it in private, that's... And the idea behind losing your freedom, we give up freedoms under the protection of the government, because that's basically what we do. The Patriot Act exists for one. No one knows what that does in Congress, so who cares?
And I do agree with you. Everyone that is living underneath government power, like you said, gives up a little bit of freedom for that security. But as we can tell, a lot of our government officials are easily corruptible. I'm not saying that they're all corrupt, but I'm saying that everyone is easily corruptible. And it's been shown in the past that when one man or a group of people have too much power, it gets to their heads and they abuse that power. So why should we give them the power to abuse it? It's like abusing nuclear
Here's
codes.
the thing, though. So if the government was to say, "Okay, you operate under us now," basically saying that
Your government
it's a
operates.
two-way thing of trust. Because the reason the government's doing it in this first place is because they know if they wanted to, they could easily overthrow us. And so they're saying, okay, you can operate under us. But they also know that if they overstep their boundaries, that they're not going to be happy and they're going to take over anyways. So it's a two-way thing of trust where if you do your job, we'll do ours. We'll kind of direct you into what you have to do, but we're not going to we're not going to be in full charge of you. You can still operate. However, when we call to action, you guys, we want you to listen.
Well, what this act was saying is that they're not allowed to go out and, save someone from getting robbed or mugged in the alleyway. Yeah. It was the government had to specifically tell you that you had to go save that person being robbed in the alleyway, or you become a fugitive because you're acting outside the government's control, quotation marks.
Yeah, so essentially they were like, hey, you work for me now.
You have to wait for me to tell you to go save
So
somebody.
then they have to make explicit descriptions of what they can and can't do. Like stopping someone from getting robbed, that should just be common knowledge that you help any way that you can. When, especially getting robbed. Like if you see someone getting robbed, it's our moral obligation to step in and do something about it. Whether it literally get in the crossfires or call 911 and then get in the crossfires. There has to be, I believe that you should have descriptive exemptions in those cases. Now, in certain cases where it's like the entire country or the entire world, that's when the government should say, go deal with that.
Well, and so I agree with you. The government, that registration act, they should have just, this only applies to big instances where Thanos comes and snaps everyone out of existence, sort of thing. And it shouldn't apply to the little things like helping little people out. But I don't see why we'd have to have a act for the government to go tell the superheroes to go save the world, because I bet you in every single instance that the Avengers or whoever decides to go stop this big threat, the government would have already told them to go stop them. And why do we need a piece of legislation that's really void, because the superheroes already are going to go and stop and help people out in the situations where the governments would agree, but also possibly compromise their own personal rights and safety.
So the thing is government doesn't operate based on themselves. They operate based on the will of the people. So if the people feel insecure that the heroes don't step up and take responsibility for the actions they cause, who are they going to get after to manage them? The idea being, if Graham doesn't like something, he can go protest and get his
And ask for it
congressional
to get
leader
changed.
to change it, whether it be by forming a new law or by taking it to the Supreme Court in whatever. But the idea being, it's not what the government wanted, it's what the people wanted. Because the people did not feel safe.
Makes sense, and I agree, because that is what the sole purpose of government is it's supposed to be, and that's what awesome is about our American government, is that it's supposed to benefit the people and follow the agenda of the people and not the agenda of the officials that are in those positions of leadership. And I think that was I don't know, it's kind of a gray area, because I completely agree that that the government should take care of things that the people want to have happen. But should that infringe on the right of others?
No, it's the idea behind it. If you were to become president and you become a private citizen again, you're technically not a private citizen anymore.
You're still a government.
Because you still get CIA protection. Now this is out of courtesy, but you still get daily briefings. You know top secret information.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just, oh, I'm a private citizen again, I can go do whatever the crap I want. You can't. And that's kind of the same thing with like superheroes. They're to the point where they're free, but they're also not.
But they're not elected to those positions. No one told them. They didn't choose for that
Now,
sort of exposure.
I get that, but to the point, there's like, you could say that, like, it happens no matter what, really. Even if you didn't want to become something, you can still become it. But the idea being, you're so powerful that if we don't step in, what's limiting you? What's your limiting factor? What's stopping you from ruling the world?
Good point. But how would being under the control of the government stop them from deciding to rebel against the government and then just rule the world anyways?
Again, as I said, it's a law of trust.
So why can't we have that trust just without a piece of legislation? Why can't we just trust that the superheroes are doing their things for the right reasons, and they're at least trying to protect civilians, stop civilian casualties?
If you are a private civilian and you are in a place where a battle just happened and you fear for your life and you don't know who they are, what's stopping you from hating them? What's stopping them from saying, I'm scared of them because I don't know them and I don't know if they're going to kill me next. I don't know if they're going to be the cause that kills me tomorrow morning.
It goes back to that trusting. How do we know?
You don't. How? Like if I see a stranger, am I going to trust them immediately even if they help me? No, because I don't know what they're in it for.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the same thing with superheroes. Sure, they can do good, but in the minds of lots of people, it could be as an act of terrorism against their lives. They could be incredibly fearful what they can do because they don't know whether or not they're going to wake up the next morning.
Person.
You could put that
Emery and I have kind
We
of gone
go
back
towards
and
that with
forth
government too.
throwing
How could I trust the government? How do I know that I'm not going to wake up tomorrow and the government goes to crap? You can't necessarily trust anyone. You can,
But
you
the
can
idea
say,
behind it
so
is
I
that-
could say I trust Graham, but for all I know right now, he's thinking about beating the living crap out of me. And I'm sure he's
No.
not, but he could.
Now, the reason that we can say we trust the government is because the government of itself has a face. We know who to blame if stuff hits, like, if stuff goes wrong, you know who to blame. And it's also the idea that we elect people who run the government, so we should trust them more. But to the point where they stop listening to us, we start fighting back against them. It's basically a friction machine where we stop each other.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea with the superheroes is they're outside of that machine. They've got free reign on whatever the crap they want. And like you said, even with this act, they could still,
Do
overtake
whatever.
the government. But again, with no face, who's to blame?
Well, in like real life, I forgot what I was gonna say. So like in real life, even if someone didn't have any powers, if they had like say a gun and you didn't, like there's no way of you stopping them.
No.
So
But I know, and I know for a fact that I can't stop them, because if we're talking about America here, I know that they have the right to a gun. I submit, because I know I can't do anything. However, in most cases where I, submit, chances are I'm not going to be killed. They'll just mug me and take whatever I have
That's
off.
not always true, though.
That's not always true, though, but in most cases, that's probably what would
I
happen.
mean, you don't even have to have a gun to mug someone. You
No,
can just be
use
a
a knife.
person that beats the crap out of them.
But
Just less efficient.
even with the gun, there are things in place, but people don't.
listen.
You can-
So
The analogy of a gun's a good one, but that's a lot broader, because that takes on issues that
yeah.
current government's facing, especially when it comes to gun control,
Yeah.
as well as police forces. But
That's another episode.
yeah. But the idea being, if I put on a mask and I scare people, and I, threaten their very livelihoods, why can't the government step in and say, if you're going to scare the people, show them who you are. If you want to operate here, show them who you are so they know who to blame if stuff goes wrong. Because the idea being, you're a superhero, you should save everyone from whatever happens.
Okay.
If some intergalactic being is going to come and destroy the planet, you should stop them. If they destroy a city,
That's on me.
that's on you. Because you didn't do what the people wanted you to do.
I have a
But
total
it's-
debate against that.
It's your choice to go and save that. So it's your choice to go and save that against that threat. Like,
But it's the
even
idea...
you could say no at any point. You chose to say yes.
Yeah, but it's
before.
the idea that you realize you could do something and you could help people. Now sure, I totally agree with being able to help people. When you help people on a global scale, you just can't step back and say, I'm done. Because all of a sudden, to those who looked up to you, where is he? Where'd he go?
And then,
Why can't we put the blame on why can't we just put the blame on the mask? The individual is still Spider-Man, whether we know him as Peter Parker or not. So why we still have someone to blame? Why do we have to know their identity?
Because he's...
And why? So,
And how do we know that the government is committed to following through all the way for protecting us? The government at any point could pull back and say, you know what, screw it, suckers, we're done protecting you. It's on your own to defend yourself. The same thing with the superheroes. We know them as a character that, of course, they're going to fight till they die. But it's the same thing for the people. How do we know that? How do they know that that's how they feel and that they're going to fight to the end? Same thing with the government.
now we know that the government isn't going to do that.
We hope the government.
The government- the
We're
only-
going to
so-
rephrase it to we
We're at
hope.
hope.
Well, if the government was to do that, we act in multiple ways. One, we overtake, and we establish our new one. Two, we stop paying taxes, which then angers the government even more, but it kind of shows us our resolve. And it's the idea that when humans are backed into a corner, that's when we're most dangerous,
Mhm.
because that's when we stand up and we fight. But with superheroes, and especially like superhuman abilities, can you classify that as human?
So you're
If I,
saying...
if
still
I have
people.
the ability to lift a building, am I human?
So you're saying...
Yeah.
So are we saying the strong man that can deadlift?
I'm not
that
saying-
that can deadlift half a ton,
Okay.
but no one else can do that. Are we saying that he's not a human?
I
anymore?
believe that he's human because even when he does that, he shows that he's struggling.
The Spider-Man lifting the building is showing that he's struggling too.
That
He still bleeds. He
Yeah.
still breathes.
he's still a human.
Tell me, Emery, do you...
Lifting a building. Spider-Man still bleeds when he's lifting the building.
And
He still gets beat up, so how are we saying... So,
Okay.
now we're getting into the argument, what's defined as a human?
Like,
Like,
what-
going back to that
So-
history bill about pornography, that darn kid, he...
freaking
and we
kid.
ran into issues because people in Japan were substituting octopuses.
Oh.
yeah.
And
So you
what
telling
defines
me?
as human?
Are you telling me that so Peter Parker before he got bit by the spider, he's human, but as soon as he gets bit by a spider, he loses all
No,
of
okay.
his.
So
his humanity.
I'm saying that Peter Parker is human, and that the identity known as Spider-Man, there are certain characteristics that could be human, but Spider-Man in and of himself, as a character, quote unquote,
Isn't
could you
human.
define him as a human, or can you say he's someone with super abilities who's known? Can you say that Spider-Man as the character, quote unquote, is human, or is he Spider-Man?
So you're saying as soon as he puts on that mask, he's no longer a human.
I'm saying when he puts on the mask
he's saying
in public.
Peter Parker's a human, but we can kind of relate with that and kind of blame him. I
As
think what
soon
Emery's
as-
saying, but we don't know what Spider-Man is, so
As the general public who doesn't know who Spider-Man is, to them Spider-Man may be less than a human. He may just be known as Spider-Man. Sure, there may be a guy behind the mask, but in the general public, what is Spider-Man?
So are you saying that we should now go blame specific government officials?
I'm not
for
saying we
certain
should
things?
blame-
because the government isn't. It's too broad of a thing. I think that's where you're getting at with Spider-Man is it's not a specific
Yeah.
person to blame, while Peter Parker's a specific person to blame. So instead of blaming the government about everything, should we blame a government official Carson to Trump for something wrong with that?
So, what I mean by specific, I shouldn't say like we get to the individual, especially when it comes to government, because usually when issues arrive, it's usually whether in the legislative branch, which is everyone in that case, or if it's in the executive department, the blame's already on the president because he's the head of state.
So then shouldn't we just blame all the superheroes because for something that happened to Spider-Man?
No, so like, okay, if Spider-Man causes an issue, and like say he was the sole issue that caused this greater broad of things, I'd say you go for him specifically. But if, say, the team, the Avengers, was the root cause of the problem, you blame all of them as a group.
So
not
why
just the
can't we just blame them? So everyone's going to blame them whether or not they come out and take responsibility. Everyone's
Yeah.
going to blame the Avengers for what
Yeah.
happened. So why do we need to reveal their identities and
Because-
put their personal lives at greater
Well, the
risk?
second that they reveal their identities under the registration, they have the support of, if they're, if this is specifically American, they have the support of the strongest government in the world.
Yeah,
Not even
but-
the strongest.
But as been proven in the past, the strongest government can't seem to hold themselves up against the Sinister Six or the Shatari army. They're not sufficient
Those-
protection for those superheroes that are putting their personal lives at risk.
Those are the cases in which, superheroes take charge. But when it comes to domestic issues,
Define
or-
domestic issues.
like,
Assault, battery, rape. Would
So
Like-
you're saying in domestic
when it
instances
comes
that
to
you have
issues,
already said that you
when
that
it
the
comes to
action
issues
cover.
that the American government can handle itself, that's what it's. Superheroes should take care of the stuff that world governments can't.
But okay,
but
Carson, go ahead.
both of y'all shut up. I'm about to blow your minds. Okay, so the thing. Anyway, so the problem I have with Emery says that we need to blame. So let's say Superman, or not Superman, because whatever. This is a Marvel place.
Hey, it's all superheroes.
You know
We
what?
don't discriminate.
I'm discriminating. So let's say Spider-Man is protecting a city. I'm not pausing. Let's say Spider-Man is protecting a city, and the villain causes damage. Are we blaming Spider-Man for that damage?
Or should
Because it's not his fault for the damage.
So-
It's the villain's fault.
I'd say we blame the villain in that case, and if he's caught, he'd be tried and jailed.
Because
that means
but
we
I
can
think-
argue
I
in
think-
all instances, superheroes aren't going out and punching brick walls because they.
I don't know very many superheroes going out and going, I hate this
think-
building. Screw you.
They're
I
fighting.
think-
The reason why they're causing collateral damage and all the things that people want the Registration Act to cover is
It's
because
because they're
of
being
those
thrown
villains. So
into
should we-
those
so
buildings.
should we hold the villains
Well,
accountable
I think
and
the
then praise
only-
the superheroes?
I think the only time we hold superheroes responsible in this case is if there is a civilian casualty that they knew they could have saved. If they could have saved,
How do you
can
know
save
that,
someone?
though?
You never know
If you can save
true
it.
point. But then, government works off of fallacies and stuff. They don't actually do crap when it comes to researching what they want to do. They could easily say, you could have easily saved them, and that'd be that. All of a sudden, you have the government as your enemy. So,
Well, the thing is, not all superheroes
Superheroes
have
can't save
superpowers that are like, oh, there's a person behind that wall. I need to save them. They don't know that. Not every superhero has that power.
Not the thing. I love what they say in Spider-Man is sometimes
The
you just
Peter
have
Tingle
to.
can't save
Sometimes you just
everyone.
have to accept is that you can't always save everyone.
I mean, in war, and I'm bringing war into this, in Afghanistan, or Iraq, you can't save everybody. You can't. It's not. It's possible, but also it's very much not possible.
but I also think that superheroes shouldn't operate outside the law.
Why?
So technically,
Because
they-
what makes a superhero better than a normal civilian, other than that they save people?
they have powers that make them qualified.
If
to
all of
put-
a sudden Graham stops a mugger, what qualifies him to operate outside of the law? What makes it so he can disregard any policeman who pulls him over?
He's using common sense, which people nowadays don't know what that is because
well,
they don't know
and
common sense.
like we've already talked about, like you said, it was common sense that people should just go stop a mugging.
Yeah.
So
So
we
we're
have,
talking about all of those minor things, so
But
muggings, robberies, whatever.
But like
everyone is
when
covered
you come
and
out of
protected.
it, when you come out of it, you all of a sudden get the idea. Oh, they're not going to stop me from doing other things. So what makes it so I have to pull over when a cop car, shines its lights at me? What makes it what? Because I helped someone, I saved someone. So why do I have to?
that's different though.
and they should stop.
Just
Obviously.
because you stop someone from just because Graham stopped me from mugging Alex does not mean that he's above the law. That just means that he's a good person and a good citizen.
And
But Graham, in and of himself, can get stuck in his skull.
Yeah, if he wants to be selfish of himself and say, "Oh, I'm above the law,"
And then that's when he crosses the line. Like, sure, he saves someone, and that's where he crosses the line, and he should be tried, obviously. Like, even Peter Parker, in multiple instances, he actively knows that he is breaking the law. Like, I can't name the numbers right off the hand, but at one point he gets framed for stealing something, and he should turn himself in. And at multiple instances, they should turn themselves in because they did something legal. So they shouldn't be restricted for being who they are. They should be restricted for the things they did.
So if Spider-Man, and I don't remember many instances where Spider-Man, steals something. He always, with the other web, gives or he always leaves the cash that it's due or whatever. And all those instances where Spider-Man's framed for murder or whatnot, it always turns out that Spider-Man wasn't. Like, Spider-Man didn't ever do anything wrong besides just trying to help save people.
There's-
So I agree with Alex. If they shouldn't be held, I don't know.
like in Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 3, he's literally he's framed for robbing a bank or something, and it was all photoshopped. Just pointing that out. I don't know how that's relevant, but just brought that in there.
I don't know. It's kind of, this is kind of, I love having these conversations because there's no right.
Someone's gonna get
It's
punched.
all up to perspective.
Playing devil's advocate is really hard.
And I love having these type of conversations. But let us know in the comments below what side you're on. Whose side are you on, and what your thoughts. We might have to do this in a couple more episodes. Have a couple more episodes. So this might be part 1. But thanks for listening in today. I'm Graham.
My memory.
I'm Carson.
Special guest Alex Beebe.
Yeah.
Baby.
Anyway, we'll catch you next time.
Don't forget to be good, do more, and cultivate happiness. Peace.